Now we're going to go through a similar process to discover the rules of compound complex meter. So we're still in the complex realm, but now it's a compound complex realm. So the rules are similar, but just slightly different. Let's go over them. The bottom number of the time signature points to the note that represents the microbeat. Here we have a change. Okay? You'll notice the bottom number is an 8 now. And when we were learning about compound meter, you learned that in the case of compound meter, the bottom number represents the microbeat. So in this case, the bottom number is usually an 8. It can be another number sometimes, but usually it's an 8 when we're dealing with any type of compound meter. Okay? The top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Notice how this time it only says 3. It doesn't say 2 and 3, and you'll find out why that is in a minute. If the top number of the time signature is not prime, then its immediate factors must be prime, and one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. So the third rule is the same as before. And all these rules must be satisfied for this to be considered compound complex meter. Okay? So let's find out if 1 over 8 is an example of compound complex. Well, the bottom number does represent the microbeat, because if we were to take that bottom number, okay, and make it into a denominator of a fraction, and then give that fraction a numerator of 1, we would read this as 1/8, which means the 8th note, or T, represents the microbeat. Okay? Again, that's from that reference sheet that I posted. Now, the top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Well, here we have a number 1. Number 1 is not the number 3, and it is prime, so that means the second rule is satisfied. Let's go on. If the top number of the time signature is not prime, well, we don't have to go that far because we know 1 is prime. So therefore, the rules are satisfied. 1/8 is an example of compound complex meter. However, we're not going to be using 1/8 this week because 1/8 is not an example of compound complex meter that can be duple or triple. Okay? Since there's a 1 on top, that means only 1 microbeat can fit in the measure. So that means no macrobeats can fit in the measure. So it's really complex in that way. In order for it to be duple or triple, there has to be either 2 or 3 macrobeats in the measure. So we're not going to work with 1/8 this week. Let's try 2/8. Okay? The bottom number is the same, so rule 1 is satisfied. Rule 2 says the top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Well, here we have a 2. It's not the number 3. Is it prime? Yes, it is. So that means we have satisfied the rules. We don't have to go on to rule 3 because 2 is prime. So this is an example of compound complex meter as well, 2 over 8. Now, the thing is, we're not going to be working with this version either because, again, you can only fit 2 microbeats in the measure, so we can't fit a macrobeat in the measure yet, not even 1 macrobeat. Okay? Now, you have to remember the reason for that is because in the compound realm, because even though this is complex meter, we're also in the compound realm. That's why these words are yellow, right? In this realm, the macrobeat is made up of 3 microbeats. That can also be found on the reference sheet I posted for formulas related to compound meter, okay? When you're in the compound realm, it takes 3 microbeats to make just 1 macrobeat. So that means we can't even fit 1 macrobeat in the measure yet. So this is not going to be useful to us this week. Let's move on. Let's try 3/8. Okay, so the bottom number is the same, so let's move on to rule 2. The top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Well, 3 is a prime number, but since it's saying other than 3, that doesn't work, okay? So we could go on to rule 3, however, it's going to tell you that one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3, and if we were to break down 3, we would get 3 times 1. And let me just show you that. Okay? And those are the immediate factors of 3, but since those have to be prime numbers other than 1, 2, and 3, obviously that doesn't work. So 3/8 is not an example of compound complex. It is an example of compound meter, however. It's an example of compound triple because we have 3 microbeats in the measure. Now, those 3 microbeats make up 1 macrobeat. Okay? So it's interesting because you might think, oh, well, if there's only 1 macrobeat, why would it be an example of triple? Well, it's just a more compound version of triple, that's all. So either way, it's not an example of compound complex, so we have to keep going. All right? Let's try 4 over 8. Okay, the bottom number is the same. The top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Is 4 a prime number? No, because it can be broken down once again into 2 and 2. Those are its immediate factors. Okay, if the top number is not prime, then its immediate factors must be prime. 2 and 2 are prime. However, one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. 2 does not work. Therefore, 4 over 8 is not an example of compound complex. It's actually just an example of duple meter, because 4 and 8 can be reduced to 2 over 4. Think of it like a fraction. If you saw a fraction that read 4 over 8, you could reduce the numerator to 2 and reduce the denominator to 4. And 2, 4 is an example of simple duple. So this is not a very useful time signature, so we can keep going. 5 over 8. The bottom number is the same. The top number of the time signature is a prime number other than 3, usually. 5 is a prime number other than 3, so far we are in business. We don't even have to keep going. So we know that 5, 8 is a good example of compound complex meter. The rules are satisfied, so we are going to add that to our example. We are going to add that to our list. So far we have 5, 8. All right, let's see if we can find a couple more. 6, 8. Right away, you should realize this is not going to work because we've been working with 6, 8. We know that 6, 8 is an example of compound duple, but let's just run it through the machine just to make sure. The bottom number is the same. The top number is usually a prime number other than 3. 6 is not a prime number because it can be broken down into 3 and 2. 3 times 2 makes 6. Since 6 is not prime, its immediate factors must be prime. And 3 and 2 are both prime. However, one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't work. So that's why we know for sure that 6, 8 is not an example of compound complex. Let's keep going. 7 over 8. Okay, the bottom number is the same. The top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. Is 7 a prime number other than 3? Yes, it is. So therefore 7, 8 works as an example of compound complex meter, just like 5, 8. And we're going to find that 5, 8 and 7, 8, not only are they good examples of compound complex, but they also work as duple or triple. And we will find out later how that's going to work. All right, let's see if we can find one more. 8 over 8. Bottom number is the same. Top number is usually a prime number other than 3. Can 8 be broken down? Is it prime? It is not prime because it can be broken down into 4 times 2. Okay? Since it's not prime, its immediate factors must be prime. 2 is prime, but 4 is not prime, so already we know this is not going to work. 8 over 8 is not an example of compound complex meter. Okay? It's actually more of a multiple of simple quadruple because 8 and 8 can be reduced to 4 over 4. And we know that 4, 4 is an example of simple meter. So this is not a useful time signature. Let's keep going. 9, 8. We've worked with 9, 8 before. We should know by now that 9, 8 is an example of compound triple meter. But let's just run it through the machine. Bottom number is the same. Top number is usually a prime number other than 3. 9 is not a prime number because it can be broken down into 3 times 3. Since it's not prime, its immediate factors must be prime. 3 and 3 are both prime. However, one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't work. 9, 8 is not compound complex. It is compound triple. Okay? It's just regular old compound meter, not complex. Let's try another number. 10 over 8. I think you know where I'm going with this now. So let's see. The bottom number is the same, so the first rule applies. The top number of the time signature is usually a prime number other than 3. 10 is not a prime number because it can be broken down into 5 times 2. Since 10 is not a prime number, its immediate factors must be prime. And as it turns out, 2 is prime and 5 is also prime. One of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. Well, 2 doesn't work, but 5 is a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. Please notice that this bullet point is specifically saying that one of those factors must be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't have to be both. Just one of them has to be a prime number other than 1, 2, and 3. 5 is a prime number, so therefore 10, 8 is an example of compound complex meter. And if you think about it, 10, 8 is really just 2 measures of 5, 8. So having one measure of 10, 8 is like having 2 measures of 5, 8. So we know that 5, 8 is compound complex, so why wouldn't 10, 8 be compound complex as well? All right? So we have found our third example, and we are set. Now we could keep going. 11, 8 is a good example of compound complex because 11 is prime. 12, 8, not so much. 13, 8 is a good example as well because 13 is prime. You could go up to 15. 15 is not prime, but it does work with the rules. If we were to pass it through the machine, it would pass. 17 works because 17 is prime. 19 works because 19 is prime. And we could keep going. However, if we were to go past 10, then we would be dealing with examples that are not duple or triple, but rather quadruple or quintuple. And we don't need to go that far. We don't need to get that complex. So we are done looking for examples of compound complex meter. This is also a good time to take a break.